My name's Neil Tewson, and I have a company called Perfect Teams. The strapline really is quite simple. Nobody's perfect, but the team can be. And so it does exactly what it says on the tin. We just help businesses and organisations put together perfect teams. Well, Perfect Teams is a diagnostic, and it goes back to a thought experiment I had with Carl Jung. Because I'd done psychometrics, and you look at the whole world of psychometrics, it starts from a source point of 1921, when Carl Jung wrote Psychological Types. And in that, there was a theory, and it became known as a 4-factor, 8-factor, and 16-factor theory. And all the psychometric testing from that source point in 1921 started, the Myers-Briggs, the DISCs, the Insights, the Thomas International, 16PF, all that psychometric testing started from Jung's original theory. And what I did is I looked at that. I'm an engineer, I'm not a psychologist. I looked at that source and I went, well, what if it's wrong? And any psychologist in the room or listening to this right now going, what do you mean it's wrong? Well, in fact, if you go back to source, I mean, it's like any code that's written. If the source code's wrong, you just put band-aid after band-aid and you end up with a stream, which actually, if you've got to go back to the beginnings and sort it out. So the sorting it out in my head was me having a conversation with Carl Jung. So Carl Jung was sitting right there. I said, look, Dr. Jung, everything that's happened in the last 100 years with psychometric testing comes back to you in this book that you wrote in 1921. I said, it's a terrific legacy. Don't get me wrong, that the instruments that were developed have been of use for millions and millions of people. It's a fantastic legacy. But I want to challenge you about your source theory. You talk about two attitudinal components. You talk about introversion and you talk about extroversion. I'll give that a tick. I agree with you. It's massively important. You then talk about 4 components of behaviour. And you name them thinking and feeling. I'll agree with you. I'll give that a tick. What you did then was you introduced something called irrational components. And you had one of them called intuition. And what you did is you took that irrational component because you were working with an OR framework, you were introverted or extroverted, you were a thinker or a feeler. You took that intuition and you juxtaposed it against something called sensing. If you actually unpack sensing, and it's in your book there, it's just a smorgasbord of leftover and debris of thinking and feeling that you called irrational to give you something to put against intuition. So you had, so your project was balanced. I disagree with that. Why don't you forget all that smorgasbord, that debris, and just look at intuition and raise intuition and put it on equal footing with thinking and feeling. So at the centre of your theory then you have a triad, a triangle of thinking and feeling and intuition. Now you didn't know it in 1921, but modern research into the way the brain's structured actually brings up that we've got 3 parts of our brain. We've got an intuitive reptilian piece, a mammalian familial relationship piece, and we've got this human contextual processing piece. If you put that, because we are humans, we do thinking and feeling and intuition, and you put this triangle, this triad at the centre, and then you run your permutations with introverted and extroverted, you don't end up with a 4, 8 and 16-factor model, which all psychometrics is run with. You end up with a 12-factor model that's an AND framework. And Carl Jung turned around to me and said, yeah, young man, I think you're right. So I've developed a process, a platform that uses a 12-factor model. It's not psychological, it's about character, not personality. And I've developed a process that's an instrument that's fit for the 21st century, that's about thinking and feeling and intuition, with introverted and extroverted, that gives you 12 distinct characters. And what we can do is we can map those, because you can put 12 around a clock face, and it makes sense. It gives you instant profiles.